morning. I think we're ready to begin. I ask for those people who are in the audience to silence their electronic devices, phones, tablets, whatever. And also as a reminder to us up here on the dais to do the same. This meeting is called to order. I believe we do have a quorum. Looks like we're absent a couple of people. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
David Arenberg. Carrie Howard. Clevis Headley. Michael Cradell.
Present.
Michael Lofredo.
Here.
Armand Priori.
Here.
Celicia Smith-Gordon.
Here. All right. Do we have a quorum? Okay, I believe we do. Any objection to the people who are here? No objections heard. We'll continue on. There should be agendas at the podium for those people who are present. Please feel free to take a look at them along with the comment cards. If you'd like to make a comment to the commissioners sitting here, please do so and address which particular area on the agenda that you wish to discuss here. You'll be given 3 minutes to, at the appropriate time, to discuss the same with us, okay? And we welcome you here. Next on the agenda is the approval of the Inspector General's meetings for the last meeting. I believe only 3 parties or 3 commissioners were present at that meeting. Is that correct, commissioners? Commissioner Howard, Commissioner Arenberg, and Commissioner Cradell. 4. Are there 4? Who is the 4?
She's not here, Robin Bueller.
Oh, okay. That's right. Robin Bueller, who is the immediate past chair, is no longer with us. Any corrections to those minutes?
Move to accept as presented.
Okay. Seconded by Commissioner Arenberg. Voted. All say yay. Say yay. Aye. Opposed, the same side. All right. Minutes are thereby approved. Paragraph 5 of the agenda, continued discussion regarding the recruitment of the Inspector General. As we know, we're losing Inspector General Cheryl Steckler, and I'm so sorry to see that. But we do have some candidates to discuss today, and I believe all of us have received the applicants' information who have timely applied. Those who have met the minimum qualifications, we have responded to the county and with our selections. We have been given a worksheet of the top, how many are there here? Top 10? Top 1, 2, 3. Top 9. All right. I'm going to ask if I could, Ms. Yan, did I pronounce that right? Yan or Yan?
Yan is fine.
Yeah. Ms. Yan, to please tell us what we have since you have placed this in a particular order.
Certainly. Good morning. I'm Leilani Yan. I'm the Manager of Recruitment and Selection. I've been in contact with you over the last couple of weeks regarding the pool of applicants for the IG. We had received 69 applications total. All of their materials were forwarded to you in some manner. We had done a very cursory pre-screening for minimum qualifications, as the chair had described. We also provided you all others for consideration in another packet. We solicited professional conduct questionnaires from the entire pool of 69, and we provided to you both the null responses as well as any incidents that were reported electronically. We asked for sort of an informal poll this week of each of you as panelists as to your top 10 candidates based on your review of their applications and relevant materials. Of those who responded to me, I have 6 out of 7 panelists that did give me their top 10 or so. It may be a little above or below that number, but the intent was to compile the results into a frequency table. And that's the attachment that you have before you. It's a frequency distribution worksheet. I simply noted the number of times each person's name was noted by a panelist. So the top group who received 5 out of 6 respondents here on the panel would be these top 3 persons. And if you go further down, you have 2 people who had received 4 votes out of the 6 respondents. You have 4 persons, who 2, then 4, then 1, 2, 3, 5, who received 2 votes out of 6 persons responding, and you have 11 who received 1 vote each. And again, it's just a starting point for discussion. The next phase in the selection process would be to have a short list of candidates identified that you would interview. I know Inspector Steckler had been in touch with you regarding possible interview dates during the month of May, and that's also something that would be up for discussion today, the next step and the timing of that. We've kind of worked backwards from the time at which Ms. Steckler's contract ends to have somebody on board within that month of June or so. So there may be a little period of overlap to get the new person, familiar with the process while our Inspector General is present.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, if I may. I'm sorry. Am I on? Okay. When the applicants, the list that we select are brought here, is the county flying them down? Are we paying for them to come and to be interviewed?
Yes.
Yes, they're not doing this on their own, so the county is doing this. So we need to make a decision of who's coming and who's going to.
Yes, the county does have a policy in place for that. And what we've done in the past is if we make an offer to someone who we've flown down and they decline that offer, then we respectfully request that they reimburse us for that. We found in the past that, especially this year, would probably be indicative of that. It's nothing like being in South Florida during the time when weather's bad up north, and we prefer people not just to have an opportunity to take a trip to South Florida. So
I understand that.
we make a job offer and you decline it, we kind of expect to be reimbursed for that.
Okay. If you'd be so kind, will you state your name for me?
Sure, I'm sorry. I'm Wayne Condry. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Palm Beach County.
Thank you
Somebody
very
works
much.
in my office.
Commissioners, we only have 6 out of the 7 of us who have turned in our list. I suppose it would be proper for me to motion or move that we continue this discussion without the 7th commissioner. I'll make that as a motion. Is there a second?
Is a motion required?
I don't think a motion is necessarily required, but I just decided to do one anyway.
Knock yourself out.
Do you second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and properly second so that we will have these discussions on these applicants so that we can make our short list and continue on and make a decision of who's coming. Okay? All right.
I have a question. Actually, I think the expression doing time in South Florida is a very bad way to express things. But how many candidates were actually interviewed, when General Steckler was hired?
There were 9 candidates who interviewed.
Okay.
What, 9, did you say? I'm sorry. I guess I'll open with a question as to the methodology of reviewing these names. Are we going to do almost like a line item and go through each individual here in an open session, or
I would
how are we
suggest-
going to come to the conclusion of narrowing this number down?
Well, I think that probably the best way to do it, Ms. John has been doing this for a while, but I would think that you'd start with the top number, with the top person, who is John Kerry, to see if there are any discussions about Mr. Kerry. Obviously, 5 of us have voted for Mr. Kerry. There may be some who did not.
Okay. I think that Mr. Kerry is not necessarily the top person. This looks alphabetical.
No.
Within those sections. So each of them got 5.
In that section, there are 3 who received 5 votes in that
Right.
main section.
But he's alphabetically just first.
Yes. So, yes. Commissioner Howard.
I would actually move that we interview, I'll start with the first group, and that we do approve interviewing the first group, that 5 have already said they want to interview, since that's the majority of the committee.
Let me make sure I'm clear. You're moving to interview only those who have already...
I'm starting with that.
Starting with...
I'm starting with the first 3, and then we can move down from there, but it seems that the first 3, rather than necessarily discussing them individually, since 5 have already decided they're worthy of being interviewed, we go forward with that.
Madam Chair, I would concur. I would even take it to the next, because 5 and 4 gives you gives you a majority of the board who have supported those individuals. So I would say the top 5, 6, 7 individuals should absolutely be on that list.
Are you
And that's
amending-
fine.
I will make that motion.
Okay, so you're amending Commissioner Howard's motion.
If she's willing to
Yes.
amend it.
All right. Yes. Commissioner Amber.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Can we decide whether we're going to interview people who have placed their minimum salaries above what we are offering? Because Mr. Carey, for example, is saying his minimum salary is $180,000. That's more than we offer.
Right.
Well,
The salary is up to 180, so he's within the range.
It is, it's up to 180.
Advertised to 180.
Okay.
I think it's 125 to 180, is that correct?
Yes, keeping in mind that the Inspector General for Broward County that came in a year after I did came in at 165, and the new Inspector General for Miami came in at 190 last month.
Right, and what is, okay, personal because it is public information, what is current IG salary?
I came in at 150, and then we had 3% raise last year.
Okay. All right, then that's fine then, as long as it's within the range. I guess that if they went out of the range, then because I had highlighted that as 180 because it was higher than the current salary. But if they do go outside of our range, would that person be placed in the back of the packet where it said does not meet the qualifications?
I wouldn't think so. That's, of course, whether or not we interview them would be up to us. But sometimes people don't mind taking a pay cut, a slight one.
Yeah, you certainly have the ability to negotiate whatever starting salary you want to negotiate with your selected candidate. And if they're aware that, the parameters for this particular position is X number of dollars for this board, if they're still interested, that's fine. If they're not, then they self-select out.
And if I may, remember when I negotiated the salary, we just had the county, and now there's 41 jurisdictions. So just keep that in mind also when you all look at this process.
And the candidates all know what the range is anyway, so if that was not acceptable to them, I'm going to presume they wouldn't bother going through all this work to submit their application.
So if I may restate what I believe the motion is, the motion was made by Commissioner Howard, which was amended by Commissioner Peoria, and that is to interview those in the top with the 5 votes and with the 4 votes, which comprises of 5 people who will be invited here for interviews. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Who seconded? Okay, Commissioner Ehrenberg. It's been moved and properly second. May we have a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it. Well, it looks like we have 5 people to invite down for interviews. Okay. Any discussions?
Well, we're going to discuss other folks
If
as
you'd like-
well.
If you'd like to.
I would concur with that, Madam Chair. Since we have 4 people that received 3 votes, and we've only got 5, if we want to increase the number of interviewees, I think we might want to go through those 4 and see if we can find a consensus to whether or not we want to add those to it. And that would be a matter of putting it before the commission as to whether or not they want to add more people. Excuse me, I keep moving away from this. Add more people to the 5 candidates.
I have no problem with that. I suggest then we start with the first person on the list. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Carrasquillo, Carrasquillo. Is there anyone with any comments for Nafatili? I will probably butcher this last name, but I'll give it a shot. Carrasquillo.
information. Question, do you want us to speak about a position or why or got voted or that name came up? What are you looking for now as far as the nominating or adding that individual to our list?
Well, Commissioner Fiore, it was your motion to talk about these.
Yes,
so
and that's what I'd like to do, obviously,
All right.
okay. I looked at this individual, and she got one of my votes because I saw that her background, of course, was currently working in a city providing for the Office of Inspector General, and I thought that warranted further review. That was it, simply.
Well, I liked this person's qualifications as well, I must say. Nafatili Carrasquillo also wrote and published reports of investigations stating factual findings and recommendations of efficiencies. And those are some things I think is very important too, which kind of takes on the very similar life that our present IG has been doing. We also had some independence in issuing subpoenas and other types of investigations that person is accustomed to having those kinds of latitudes. So, any other discussions regarding the possibility of Nafatili Carrasquillo?
My concern with this candidate is the duration of tenure in the previous positions. This is a 2 to 3 year person at each of the 3 positions listed. Not knowing the circumstances of the job changes, I don't know, I can't guess, but these were not position changes within a single jurisdiction or agency. This is state to state, and that concerns me. I agree that she's got previous IG experience, but I'm just really a little bit bothered by how quickly the positions have changed.
Commissioner Cardell, if we needed to or decided to continue our invitation to applicants, would you be opposed to Ms. Carrasquillo's invitation, and which would allow you to ask questions?
I would think that as compared to the other 3, if we were to stratify this third layer in the frequency table, I would move her down to the bottom of that particular layer.
Okay. Anyone else with discussions regarding this person?
Well, my thought was when I suggested this and the fact that her name popped up as the very first one, what drew my attention to her, understanding and albeit that her terms in each of those positions were short, it's the fact that it covered a very broad range, being with the Postal Service inspection and then the Department of Insurance in different locales as well as Inspector General. I thought that really carried a large scope of experience that would benefit, and I obviously would enjoy the opportunity to hear from her. Whether she's the last or the first on that group, I would like to hear what that individual had to say in an interview.
Does it concern you, the concerns that Commissioner Cardell has voiced? Does that pose a concern for you for the short stints of employment that she's had? Or he's, I don't know if it's a man or woman. I'm sorry.
I would probably say in these times where mobility is a very big factor in life in general, and I see it where people move about and go to different positions. You don't really seriously find individuals that stay with one agency. I wouldn't hold that against the candidate. I would really, I understand it's important. We don't want to bring someone on board that is looking for a next opportunity, but at the same token, I don't want to see us miss an opportunity to get someone who has experience and background in the position that we're trying to fill.
Okay. Any other comments, Commissioners, before we go to the next person? Okay, next person is Colleen Cunningham.
Well, she's clearly a career agent. One employer during her career, all law enforcement. I think there'd be a pretty good learning curve.
Yes, Commissioner Amber.
Thank you. And I thought very highly of her. I think one thing that I liked was in her letter, she wrote that throughout my career I've also excelled in the areas of community outreach and policing and so forth. And part of this job is community outreach, and that's something that I thought she had a step above some of the other applicants, which is why I put her in my top 10 list.
I do have a question. Perhaps this should go to our current Inspector General. The developments that you have made in the office in terms of technology, is it important for the new Inspector General to have an understanding of whatever software you utilize in your office to function, to make it function?
The software that we use is pretty unique, and I don't think any of the applicants will have come in with our software because we hand-developed it both locally and in the state of Florida. So none of them will probably know our systems, but they'll learn on the job like all the employees do. So I would not have that be a strong factor for you all. They will learn it. They're going to have to. So, but you do want somebody technically savvy and comfortable with the computer, obviously, because everything we do is automated.
Okay. Some of the applicants I noticed had some designations under software, computer software, and it says something like software that's, I'm paraphrasing, special to the IG, you know, and I don't know what that is, but I didn't know how important that was. And so thank you for clarifying. Okay, any other discussions regarding Ms. Colleen Cunningham? Without having any other discussions, would she then be one that we would consider inviting if we desired to or needed to? Yes?
Do we need a motion for that?
What we'll probably do is do a motion at the end of each one.
I make a motion to approve.
But we didn't do a motion on the previous one, Ms. Carrasquillo.
Would you like to make that motion now? I was going to make them collectively since they're bundled
okay.
together. But you can do it now. It doesn't.
I would think we'd be better off doing it individually
Oh.
because this is a third layer.
Okay, that's fine. Then let's talk about, would you like to make a motion regarding Nefertiti Carrasquillo?
I'd like to make a motion to vote on all four in the blue category, after we discuss all four. We can take a vote one after the next to see who we'd like to move on. That's my motion.
Any second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and moved by Commissioner Ehrenberg and seconded jointly by Commissioner Howard and Commissioner Piori that we bundle, for lack of a better word, and vote on all four of the applicants who are in the 3 zone. Okay, I'll call it the 3 zone. All right. The next one, of course, we are talking about Brian Denny.
I think he's got a tremendous amount of experience with IG offices and operations generally. He's got depth and breadth, both for the GPO and General Services Administration.
Mm-hmm. He does. Any other comments?
I would concur. I thought, and his duties performed, it spells out the Council of Inspectors Generals on integrity and efficiency, and describes what is being done. I think that's it really covers our subject matter. So I support this candidate.
Commissioner Cardell, in respect to your prior comment about the employment stint of another applicant, I must draw your attention to this applicant who also had very short stints of
I
employment.
understand. But I thought not to bring it up here because of the previous result. So,
I just wanted to point
no,
out
I
to
understand
you.
that, but I chose not to pick on that this time.
Okay, all right. All right. Any other comments regarding this applicant? Hearing none, we'll talk about Mr. Gerald Montoya.
Right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just was really impressed with this applicant's background. Baghdad and, I mean, wow.
Give him credit just for having done that service.
Really, yeah. He's done Baghdad, he could do West Palm, okay, yeah.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. But yeah, this one really, poof.
My concerns for this applicant, I must say, definitely qualified, but my concerns is that it seems to be more international type of experience dealing with the embassies and not so much in various communities within the county. And here in this county, you've got a lot of facets to deal with, so that's a concern. Any other comments?
The way I read his resume and the way I read it to begin with, other than wondering about some other connections, is that his resume reads as somebody who's sent in to fix things. And a lot of what we've got is already nicely fixed, thanks to General Steckler. So to me, even though there's multiple year durations in these assignments, his employer has always been the United States of America. He has been in a spot and then been moved to another similar function for a different agency. And he just reads to me like a fixer, for lack of a better term. That's not necessarily bad, and it certainly doesn't speak much for community involvement because that was not his task. But I still think he's a pretty strong candidate, just overall.
I concur with Mr. Red. I do. I noticed in the first paragraph duties, I supervise and conduct highly complex audits. And since it appears that, as of the last report, which I was able to look at and read, that the IG is moving in a strong direction towards auditing, and I think that should be a critical element in the selection process. So I'd like to, myself personally, like to hear from this candidate.
Okay. Any other comments, Commissioner?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Rydell. I think it's too much international. I don't care for this.
All right, I think we have concluded the discussions on the applicants in category, I hate to call them category 3, but those who have received 3 votes from the majority of the panel here. Now, since Commissioner Ehrenberg, you made the motion, I ask you to restate your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The motion is to vote on all 4 of the candidates in the blue sector, or sector 3, I think, as he said. We can go one at a time, knowing that the vote would be whether or not we grant each person an interview.
Okay, so there will be a contingency
You want to start?
invitees, or contingency applicants, or would you invite them with the same first group that we?
Well, that's
invited?
something that opened up for discussion. It's a good question. I would invite them just like we would the others.
Okay.
Because we gave a top 10 list, and even if you take all 4, which I don't think we will, but even if you take all 4, that still only comes to 9. And I realize it's a budget issue, but I think at least we should vote on them, see how many pass, get a majority, and then if it's too many, if it busts the budget, we can revisit that.
Okay, all right, that was a very long motion you made.
And relative to that, you have a timing issue, because time is moving very quickly, and if we hold off inviting them pending the other 5 interviews, we're going to be flat out of time.
Commissioner Hall.
And I would just, for what it's worth, say that the last time, the interviews actually really, I thought, educated us better on what we were looking for. You know the criteria, but as you speak to people and hear about their experience, it really helps, and I think a broad array would be very appropriate. So I would be in favor of interviewing at least the nine that are in the 3 tiers. But I know we're going to deal with them individually.
All right, well then, I don't know which motion we are talking about, because I think that basically they loop together. So if I have heard this correctly, the motion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Ehrenberg, please, is to invite the first 9, which includes those in the blue section of 3.
Only if we approve of the blue folks right now. I would say we take a vote on each one to see whether they should get an interview.
All right, seconded to, is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, so let's take a vote on the first one.
I have a question, Madam
Yes.
Chair. Is there a budget to bring these individuals in?
Well,
I'm just
I
thinking
will
about-
say that
I'm looking at it from a standpoint
it
very,
usually comes out of the requesting department's budget, funding for these things.
I don't know what the fare is between Baghdad
Well,
and...
I was going to say, my 30 years of being here, that's the furthest we've ever flown anybody for an interview is from Baghdad, so I don't know what the going rate from Baghdad.
I wouldn't want to
West
reject
Palm
the
Beach is.
individual based on the fact that he's coming from that point, but that it's,
The budget will have to come out, will be coming out of my budget, the IG's budget, so, and it's not budgeted, so we fortunately have a little extra, cash this year, because we have short of staff, so we'll have to maneuver money, but it will hit the Inspector General's budget.
Question. The gentleman we were talking about, who is Mr. Montoya, I don't know if we actually know if he is still in Baghdad or if he is stateside. If he is still in Baghdad, is there some other means that we can communicate with him instead of flying him from there?
We have done several things in the past when we were talking about a large applicant pool that's in diverse locations. And it's up to the selection committee here to make that determination. Interviews have been conducted, video interviews, where you actually conduct the interview with the candidate, though the candidate's not physically present, just like you would interview anybody else. That cuts down on travel expenses. Certainly in his position, I'm sure they're capable of doing that. The county's certainly capable of doing that. So logistically, you could still have the quality of interview without having that applicant actually physically present.
Now, there's a writing component to this interview process, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay, and how would the writing component be conducted by Skype or whatever means it is?
To answer that question, what we did with the most recent executive director for the COE was we did the writing exercise in advance of the interviews. So I was able to email the candidates the criteria, and they were able to, those who were local could set up appointments with us and come in and just complete it in a secured environment. But if somebody, has a particular situation, we could accommodate them and send it to them and have it proctored.
Okay, so there's an alternative. Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we've already voted on taking these individuals one at a time. Can we do that now? All right. Neftali?
yes.
Okay, Neftali, that's close. I'm
I
sorry.
motion-
If she's watching or he's watching, I do apologize. So Neftali Carrasquillo.
I motion to support this candidate and add her or he to the list.
Second.
All right, it's been properly motioned and seconded. Motioned by Commissioner Peoria, seconded by Commissioner Horowitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed?
No.
Did you abstain?
I'll be opposed.
You'll be opposed, okay. So there are 4 yeas and 2 noes. The other 2 noes, Commissioner Ehrenberg and Commissioner LaFrame. Okay, Colleen Cunningham,
move to include her in the invitation for an interview.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Sign
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimously, did you vote? Okay. Unanimously, she is invited. Mr. Brian Denny. Anyone wants to motion, move for him to be invited?
What, I'm sorry, what?
Brian Denny.
I move to include him in the interview process.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, before I second, I want to second, but I'm confused because, is it Brian Denny? Is that the individual we're speaking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Been moved by Commissioner Cardell, seconded by Commissioner Fiore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Okay, unanimous. And Mr. Gerald Montoya, who may be in Baghdad. Anyone moving for his interview? Is that a
I think for the record, I would motion to add his name to the, based on his credentials and outside of the issues concerning how we would reach out to him and so forth. But I would base it on credentials. I would so motion to add to the list of 8, which would make him 9.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and probably second. All in, that Mr. Gerald Montoya be invited as an interviewee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, opposed by Commissioner LaFleur.
And I would just point out, because we didn't look at them specifically, but Mr. Ballman is currently located in Brussels, and he's in the second layer. So Mr. Montoya is not the only
Excellent point.
guy out of town.
No, but I suspect that if we do need to engage in alternative ways to communicate with him for an interview, Mr.
Skype
Ballman.
works.
Mr. Ballman would be okay of using Skype or whatever means that we jointly can communicate. Okay. All right.
I have just as a question, can we, in terms of people who are out of the country, say we'll either Skype or if you, we'll fly you from somewhere within the United States?
Certainly.
So they have that option
Sure,
if
sure.
they want to
And if,
come.
and if coincidentally they have a planned trip stateside or something,
Right.
we can certainly do that.
So that's what I would suggest we do.
Okay.
as
And
a
the earlier,
procedure.
I would think that the earlier we make this decision, the earlier and less expensive it would be for the county to fly them.
And Mr. Montoya may be able to catch a C-230.
Right.
City of-
I was thinking that he can come over on one of the transport.
Be on the U.S. budget. All right, so we have now have 9 candidates to interview.
Do you want to make a motion to,
I
on the
am.
whole 9?
I was going to do that. Commissioner Howard?
I would
That's
like,
it's already done.
whoops.
No, actually, it's
First
not
and
done
third.
yet.
I would like to hear from people who think there's other folks in the group that we ought to interview at this point.
All right, then, since you've made that request, before we have this vote, are there any others whom you would like to speak about?
No, because unfortunately I didn't have the applications in time to really study them enough. That's why I really want to hear from others who have.
Have any of the commissioners looked at Michael Morales?
I was just going to bring him up, actually.
He holds a similar position. He's held it for years in another county in Florida. Morowski, M-U-R-A-W-S-K-I.
Well, wait, if you would, may we have a motion to, I heard what you said there, but I'd like for there to be a motion so that we can get that done of the 9 that we have discussed.
So move.
I thought thought we
Okay,
had them.
all right. No, actually, we talked about it, but I don't think there had been an actual motion. So moved. All right, so it's moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? All right, so we do have 9 that we have selected, and that's the first 9. Now, going on to Mr. Michael Morowski. Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, that's
there.
fine, that's all I had to say. I just wondered if anyone else had perused his resume or application, since he's got a similar position for a lot of years in a neighboring county.
He's got 13 years of experience with the Miami-Dade County Commission on Ethics and Public Trust, but not as an IG. He's been a prosecutor. And I think there's a distinction between the functions of the two. Certainly, he's learned how to navigate the system over that period of time, and he was included in my 10 or so that I submitted. But I think that the skill set of the IG is somewhat broader and certainly different than that of someone who is a prosecutor for an agency. Other than his experience with his own practice for 6 years, he's been a prosecutor his career. And while I see a lot of value in that, I don't know if compared to the other 9 candidates, he's as close a fit, although he is a lot closer to interview.
You both have discussed this gentleman. Is there any pleasure by either one of you in reference to Andy Youngman? Is that a no? Is there anyone else who wants to discuss any other applicant?
Yes, wanted to mention Mark Troville. I thought he was in my top list. I don't know if you had the email that I sent, but because I don't see him getting a single vote.
What was that?
Troville, Trouville.
I bet he's not.
Was he not in my top list? I thought he was, and maybe there was an oversight on my end. But it looks like I may be the only one who.
Troville?
Troville.
One of somebody who reported to him was also an applicant.
I'm sorry? What was that?
Someone who reported to him
Reported him as an applicant as well,
is an
right?
applicant too.
Yeah.
This is the DEA guy, right?
Yeah, DEA
Yeah,
guy who
right.
had some Harvard training.
Yeah.
And I don't know, he just seemed really impressive. He's a Fed. But I don't hold that against him. He's got some, worked for the DEA and has some impressive credentials. But I don't see him on the list. And did I not include him on my email? I mentioned that was an oversight on my part. But look, if I'm the only one who speaks up for him, then we don't need to take the time of this committee to go over him.
My concern with him, and the reason that I specifically did not include him, is the period of time that he was sacked for DEA in Miami has been a period of turmoil for that agency. And I'm a big believer in responsibility at the top. And just based on what I know, have heard, been told, and read of what's going on in that division, I didn't include him on purpose, honestly.
That being said, Madam Chair, you looking for a motion to close nominations?
Well, no, not yet, because I just want to speak about very briefly Theodore, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Staney? He was,
He's in the top.
He's one of the top ones.
oh, there he is, so good. I did good. Good. All right, now we can close.
Motion to close nominations.
All right, and is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Good. It's been moved and properly seconded that the motions to to close the applicant nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose the same sign. All right, perfect. So it looks like we do have 9 to invite. We've discussed a few others, one who was already on the list, which is a good thing. Any discussions or questions about, any further discussions or questions about the applicants coming to be interviewed? Oh, right. Now's the time for public comment. Thank you. Miss Iris? And I'm going to mess up. I don't know why today is my mess up name day. Scheibel.
Iris Scheibel, Palm Beach Gardens. I'm surprised that this is the time for public comment because I think there are a couple of other things you want to discuss, which is what's the date for the interviews, and I think I overheard you say May. I think that's really late. I think we should be doing that in April. The other thing was I had the point of question from the last meeting on public comment at the end of the interviews, but before final deliberation. And I think Ms. Yan also did a response to that. So I think there's some other things to discuss prior to
Question.
the end of this section of the...
I believe I heard you said the dates that we're going to.
I
interview
heard
them.
someone refer to May as time for interviews, and I really would ask that you do that in April.
And there was a second. There was a
And the second was, at the last meeting, at which most of you weren't able to be here, I'd raised the issue of the ability to do public comment. The first round, when Ms. Hawat was here, a lot of the commissioners knew the people in the audience and just went right before their final deliberation and just kind of ad hoc spoke to people and said, what is your impression of the people you sat through and heard all the interviews of? That's not really a good process, and that wasn't really open and transparent. And so I'd ask that as you finish the interview, so if you have 7 people, 9 people, you take a break and then you start your discussion of deliberation, that we allow public comment at that point prior to your start. It may not be talking about individuals, it might be, whatever the person wants to talk about, but I had asked that question. So that was another item for today's agenda, I believe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I can respond, unfortunately, between the chambers here and some of your schedules, there's no virtual way we can do it in April. But we do have 2 dates set aside for you all to decide, which would be May 1 and 2, and May 8 and 9. Those days, for the most part, work for most of you all, but there might be some discussion on that. But unfortunately, there's no way to get there in April. The good news is that the decision will be made by then, and then it's a matter of just negotiating the contract and getting in front of the Board of County Commission. Plenty of time to still get them here in June. So I think our schedule's okay. If you guys can agree to either May 1 or 2 or 8 or 9, we'll be fine.
May 1, I believe, is the Ethics Commission meeting.
Yes, it
Are we
is.
going to direct?
It is, and that's been discussed already with the executive director. But before we talk about that particular matter, which is an important one, but it's been handled, we need to see those of us who are available on either May 1st or 2nd or May 8th and 9th. May 1st, I believe, is a time, a very important legislative time. Commissioner Ehrenberg, will you be in Tallahassee?
I do expect to be in Tallahassee that final week of session, May 1st and 2nd. That's signing die. It's the most important days of session. But I'll be back for that next week, so May 8th and 9th sounds fine.
Okay. Then why don't I just go down the list and have you all check your calendars if you have not already done so?
But haven't we already done that?
No.
Haven't you already polled?
It would be good if you all agree publicly that would work for you all, after all the calendars yesterday.
Which 2?
May 8, 9, yeah. Trying to coordinate you all. I believe it works for all of you, but it would be good for you to all at least acknowledge that 8 and 9 works.
Yeah, I think that we're missing a commissioner. Do you know if he is available on that date?
Commissioner Headley has not responded to that particular day, but he did say anytime after May 1. He's just booked until April 30, so I'm sure he will make himself available.
All right.
May 8th and 9th is okay with me.
All right. May 8th and 9th is fine with me. Commissioner Cradell, is that
Fine with me.
I'm good.
perfect? It looks like we will have a quorum. all persons in attendance for May 8th and 9th for the interview process. Now, on our left here on our spaces is information that I suppose we do need to discuss regarding the guidelines for public comment for the interview process. Of course, it's new to most of us who are sitting here on the dais because we have not had that situation before, but I believe that Commissioners Ehrenberg and Howard, you both might have been involved in that process before, but public comment was part of the interview process. Let's talk about, if you would, the guidelines, the rules. How much time are we going to allow for the public to address the commission? 3 minutes is the usual period of time, I believe, 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. Is that okay with everyone? All right. I don't think I really need a motion for that, but does anybody oppose that? All right, good. Are we going to allow, if you would, for representatives of groups to speak? Or, do you have this? Okay. I'm at paragraph B.
Did that just come on? Yes.
Prescribed procedures for allowing representatives of groups or factions rather than members to be heard.
So I would be in favor of allowing representatives of groups that have something to say about our IG applicants.
Okay, anyone else have any comments or oppose Commissioner Howard's suggestion that we approve persons from to represent groups to speak? Hearing no opposition, let's go to number 3, which is really the same, as very similar to, C is very similar to B.
And I think, if I may, just the procedure we have with the comment cards is certainly adequate, where they can put in a comment card.
Okay. All right, so in general, I just want to make sure that we understand. After each applicant has it been where the public gets to comment? At what point does the public comment?
After all the interviews.
At the end of all the interviews. All right, before a decision is made.
Yes.
All right. Is it the pleasure of the commission to abide by the same type of procedure that was employed previously?
Well, just to be clear, it was not employed previously, but I think it would be better. The last time we did this, it was a much more informal process, and I think that was what we talked about last time, is that it's really better we all hear the information rather than it being an individual where, if you know somebody who's listening to interviews, they give you input. So I think this would be a much better process.
All right, so let's have a formal motion to make this a formal procedure.
I would move to allow public comment at the conclusion of the interviews following the procedure utilized with comment cards and a 3-minute limit, and allow representatives of groups.
Any second?
I second it.
Good. All in favor?
Can we have information?
Question?
Is there going to be, when I watched the tape of the last meeting, there were some concerns and questions about the information or the input that was being provided by the representatives from the community. Is there going to be some kind of instruction given as to what or how much they can say? I've not done this, so I'd like to know what is there guidelines as to are individuals essentially going to be able to come up and lobby for an individual of that they want to see appointed for 3 minutes?
And they have 3 minutes to say.
So I just want to be clear that that's what we're going to know from the outcome. Okay, fine. No problem.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Late on that.
That's all right. We're unanimous in that formal process for public comment and procedure. All right. Paragraph 6, new business.
I do think we need to discuss what the questions are going to be during the interview process.
Okay.
And I didn't know, I know we brought this up last time, and maybe Ms. Lalani has some suggestions.
Sounds good. We have discussed collaborating with the IG to develop questions and exercises. We would actually send those out to you in advance of the interviews to get, your feedback, suggestions, edits, deletions on, all the components of that process. We developed last time an interview day procedure where we structured the day for you as a panel. We gave you in advance a master schedule that would tell you what candidate you would see for what time frame, how the interview process itself would unfold, and I could send you a draft version of that for this time around. And again, solicit your comments and input. And this really is something that we could do, via email and phone. You don't have to have a separate meeting in order to finalize this before the interview process. I would send you the finalized version of the interview day procedures, as well as the interview questions and the order and manner in which those can be asked. And those would be the key materials that you would use that day. You would not need to bring anything with you to the interview process, except the applications if you have the paper version, just so you have something to refer to, or if you need to, probe a candidate about specific information that they provided on their application or resume, which is more of a follow-up. We also included in the interview process sort of an opening 2 minutes where each candidate introduced themselves to the panel and just had 2 minutes in which to talk about, their background and credentials as related to the job. At the conclusion of the interview process, the candidate was allowed to ask questions of the panel as well. And the panelists had a total of 7 minutes in which to ask follow-up questions based on the candidate's initial responses to the structured interview questions that you'd already asked of them. So there was a 2-minute per question sort of follow-up period afterward. So the entire time that the candidate is in front of you came out to 45 minutes per candidate. And you had a break of about 10 minutes in between candidates before you went on to the next.
Is each candidate asked the same question? All right, so when the candidate, or if a candidate decides to ask one of us a question, that may spur a range of follow-up questions. Is that allowed? All right.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I think you were about to ask a question, Mr. Cordell?
Seeing as this is the second go-round for this process, and General Steckler has so much more insight into the position than any of us do, I'd just like to confirm that your questions will have the input of General Steckler. I think they'll be so much better than we'll come up with, or that you would come up with in a vacuum. I'd also like to ask a separate question as long as I'm speaking. With respect to these applications that you forwarded to us, are these considered public record?
The application materials are public record. However, some folks in the pool that you will interview are eligible for certain exemptions from public records,
Okay.
which would just include contact information.
So this is what I'm suggesting. This committee needs to be responsible for securely disposing of these applications, not just throwing them in the garbage. That's my point.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Except isn't the information, it's not in our applications. Like addresses and all are blacked out. So it's not in There isn't anything in what we
Yeah,
received.
that was redacted before we sent
Yes.
those to you.
Okay, well, that, I understand that, but I just wanted to know, because I'm going to shred them anyway. I just wanted, suggesting it for others.
But what we were provided is public record.
Okay.
In the manner that you have it, it is.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Is there anything I'll ask inspectors? Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I do. And in terms of the interview process, will General Steckler be available during the interview process? And I ask that for two reasons. She may have some good input for us. But also, if the interviewees have questions, she might be the one who needs to answer them about the job. So it would be very nice if she could be available during the interview.
Well, that was my question too, so good.
I will do everything I can to be here, yes.
Okay.
Or we don't go forward.
We'll be okay.
All right. Now, are there any other questions? I've gotten mine answered. I think, does any commissioner have any questions or comments? Any new business? No? All right. Public comment? No further? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.